Hello and welcome to this special broadcast. Over the next half an hour, we'll tell you all about the historic elections in neighboring Bangladesh that took place last week and paved the way for a new government. I am Indrajit, coming to you from Kolkata, and I've just come back from Dhaka after witnessing these historic elections. Behind me, of course, in Kolkata, is a replica of the Bhasha Shohid Sharok that stands tall even today in Dhaka. And today is a very special day. It's February 21st, International Mother Language Day. On a day when Bangladeshi nationalists, Bengali nationalists, laid down their lives for the quest of recognition of their mother tongue, Bangla, and that led eventually to the formation of modern-day Bangladesh. Bangladesh has witnessed history all through last week in these elections after almost 2 years of interim regime under Muhammad Yunus and huge political turmoil following the students' revolution and the fall of the Sheikh Hasina government. Bangladesh is finally on its way to a democratic transition with a landslide victory of the BNP and Prime Minister Tarique Rahman taking charge. But this transition is not going to be very smooth. In fact, there are a lot of challenges in front. We will tell you all about these elections.
আমি শপথ করিতেছি যে আমি আইন অনুযায়ী সরকারের প্রধানমন্ত্রী পদের কর্তব্য
বিশ্বস্ততার সহিত পালন করিব।
বিশ্বস্তার সহিত পালন করিব।
আমি
60-year-old Tariq Rahman, also known locally as Tariq Zia, ushered in new spring in Bangladesh on 17th February 2026.
পোষণ করিব।
ও আনুগত্য পোষণ করিব।
আমি সংবিধানের রক্ষণ
He is the 11th Prime Minister to rule Dhaka's power corridors and the first man to hold the post after 3 decades and a half rule by the two Begums,
আমি
Sheikh Hasina Wazid and Khalida Zia, his mother.
আমি
সশ্রদ্ধ চিত্তে
তারেক রহমান সশস্ত্র চিত্রে
শপথ করিতেছি যে
আমি
আইন অনুযায়ী
সরকারের
প্রধানমন্ত্রী পদের কর্তব্য বিশ্বস্ততার সহিত পালন করিব।
বিশ্বস্তার সহিত পালন করিব।
আমি বাংলাদেশের প্রতি অকৃত্রিম বিশ্বাস ও আনুগত্য পোষণ করিব। আমি সংবিধানের রক্ষণ সমর্থন ও নিরাপত্তা বিধান করিব। আমি ভীতি বা অনুগ্রহ অনুরাগ বা বিরাগের বশবর্তী না হইয়া সকলের প্রতি আইন অনুযায়ী যথাবিহিত আচরণ করিব। আমি তারেক রহমান সশস্ত্র চিত্রে শপথ করিতেছি যে সরকারের প্রধানমন্ত্রী রূপে যে সকল বিষয় আমার বিবেচনার জন্য আনিত হইবে বা যে সকল বিষয় আমি অবগত হইব তাহা প্রধানমন্ত্রী রূপে যথাযথভাবে আমার কর্তব্য পালনের প্রয়োজন ব্যতীত প্রত্যক্ষ বা পরোক্ষভাবে কোনো ব্যক্তিকে জ্ঞাপন করিব না বা কোনো ব্যক্তির নিকট প্রকাশ করিব না। ধন্যবাদ।
Leading to Ganabhavan in Shere Bangla of Dhaka has not been a smooth one. His father, Ziaur Rahman, was a Pakistani military officer who later became a Mukti Jodha, or a fighter in the War of Liberation, to earn the honor of Bir Uttam. Zia was the president of Bangladesh when he was assassinated. Later, his mother Begum Khalida Zia became the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. The eldest son of former Bangladesh President Ziaur Rahman and former Prime Minister Khalida Zia, Tarique Rahman was 28 years old when he joined the BNP in 1988 and rose to prominence as its senior joint secretary in 2002. That trajectory shifted in 2007 when Rahman was detained on corruption charges during an anti-graft drive. He left Bangladesh the following year and since then lived in exile in the UK. But while in London, Rahman continued to shape BNP's strategy, addressing rallies via video calls and meeting party leaders abroad. In January 2025, Rahman reunited with his mother at Gatwick Airport after more than 7 years apart when Khalida Zia travelled for medical care. Months later, he met interim government chief Muhammad Yunus in London, signalling his continued relevance in Bangladesh's political transition. On 25 December 2025, Rahman returned to Bangladesh after an exile of about 17 years. His return to the country was made possible after criminal cases against him at home were overturned following the ouster of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in a student-led uprising in 2024. Days after his mother Khalida Zia's death, Tarique Rahman formally became chairman of the BNP in January 2026. He has been holding the position of acting chairman since February 2018. Tarique Rahman successfully led BNP to a stupendous electoral success in 12th February elections. Acknowledging that the country faces a fragile economy and weakened institutions left by the previous authoritarian regime, Tarique Rahman hopes to work with all in opposition to rebuild Bangladesh.
I call upon all political parties that participate in the election. Your ideas and views are important to us in the nation-building process. Our paths and opinions may differ, but in the interest of the country, we must remain united. I firmly believe that national unity is our collective strength, while division is our weakness.
The new Prime Minister of Bangladesh has a tough task ahead. Tarique Rahman had been a close witness to power and a victim of its extreme violence. This spring, Bangladesh has put its hopes in this man with a dynastic legacy to overcome the hard times of finding its foothold in growth once again. Bangladesh hopes the new government will curb the surging food inflation as the month of Ramzan starts. In Dhaka's crowded Gulistan marketplace, shoppers threaded through narrow alleys. Many complain about the rising cost of daily essentials, dampening the Ramzan preparations. Both consumers and traders felt the pinch of the higher prices, increasingly difficult to bear.
The new government must try to get hold of the market. I sincerely seek their attention in this regard. They should strengthen their monitoring of the market so that the general people do not struggle to celebrate Ramadan. They should prioritize it. The difference between last year's prices and this year's is huge. Now we are hoping that the new government, God willing, will take some immediate steps to curb it. They just sat in Parliament after yesterday's oath. Let's see in a few days. The new Prime Minister will try to control it, we believe. He will try for sure. Maybe he'll need some time. But it's true, the price of fruits is very high.
Bangladesh Nationalist Party has secured a landslide victory, winning 209 of 297 seats in the parliamentary elections. Coming to power, they pledged to double the size of the economy, from roughly $460 billion to $1 trillion in nominal GDP by 2034. To achieve that target, Bangladesh would require annual growth of about 9%, a tall order for a country whose economic growth has slowed to around 4%. The party has also promised to increase education spending from 2% to 6% of GDP and health spending from 0.75% to 5%. But BNP has laid down no credible plan to raise the government revenue needed to fund such ambitions. To more than double the growth rate, private investment would have to rise from 23% of GDP to 35% in Bangladesh.
The key challenge is managing the kind of macroeconomic stability, but making sure that the economy is delivering on the aspirations of Bangladeshis. Sheikh Hasina's failure to do that was a key reason why she was forced from office. If the economy hadn't been in such a bad state, it would have been, I think, very unlikely to see the mass kind of mobilization against her that we saw.
Beyond the economy, politics in Bangladesh is far from stable. The country also voted and passed the July referendum on 12th February elections. But when it was time to take oath as members of the proposed Constitution Reform Commission, BNP refused.
আমরা কেউ সংবিধান সংস্কার পরিষদের সদস্য হিসেবে নির্বাচিত হইনি।
We've all been elected as MPs, not as members of the Constitution Reform Council.
গণভোটের
It has not been adopted as per the Constitution.
সংবিধান সংস্কার
In order to constitute a Constitution Reforms Council as per the referendum,
এটা সংবিধানে আগে ধারণ করতে হবে।
this has to first be adopted in the Constitution.
সদস্যকে কে শপথ নেয়াবেন সেটা বিধান করতে হবে।
This refusal to take an additional oath under the proposed Constitution Reform Council triggered opposition Jamaat-e-Islami alliance to boycott the swearing-in ceremony of Tarique Rahman's BNP government. They also accused the security forces and BNP supporters of targeting violence during the election campaign. The coming days for the new government looks rocky with the opposition's promise of protest. The other challenge for Tariq Rahman is to win the confidence of minorities. He has two ministers, Nitai Roy Chaudhary, a Hindu MP, and Dipen Diwan from the Chakma Buddhist community to help him tide over. But beyond the rhetoric, Rahman government has to work harder to prove its real inclusive intentions, especially when the main opposition party denies to recognize anyone as a religious minority in the country.
So you said that you do not believe in the term minority. Could you explain?
Just upon the basis of religion, it's a bad practice because nation become divided and people become face to face. Rather, we are interested to look our people totally united and integrated. And this is our stand. So we will never admit any majority or minority in my country.
And its neighbor, India, is watching.
The relationship that existed under Sheikh Hasina, India must realize that that does not exist. Sheikh Hasina and Army League does not exist in today's Bangladesh. So there must be a reset from the government of India on its relations with Bangladesh, realizing that fact. Sheikh Hasina, after all, is a terrorist who has killed 1,500 people and fled this country. She has attempted destabilizing terrorist activities from the soil of India and sovereign soil of India where she is residing. We do not want to see Indian government complicit in any way supporting those terrorist activities in trying to destabilize our country. So if that is restrained and India has the mindset to realize that Sheikh Hasina and Army League does not exist in today's Bangladesh, then we will also exercise a positive mindset to bridge that gap.
India has put forward best wishes for the new government in Dhaka. Though the extradition of the former Prime Minister, now convicted in absentia to death, sits as a heavy bone of contention between the two neighbors. Tariq Rahman has to navigate tough choices to rise and stand the pressure of geopolitics, while ensuring economic revival is not a dreamy promise, but an achievable reality for Bangladesh.
Bangladesh's tryst with democracy and elections have always had a controversial past. It was in fact after an election that the entire liberation war of 1971 erupted, when the Pakistani regime did not allow the free mandate of the people, of the Bengali-speaking people in East Pakistan, its legitimacy. Following which, under Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, people in Bangladesh rose up in arms against the Pakistani regime. And over the next 55 years, there have been several churns with multiple elections. Many of them were questioned. And therefore, Bangladesh's overall tryst with elections has had a checkered past.
Bangladesh was still part of Pakistan when the general elections were held in the former East and West Pakistan in December 1970. The majority Bengali population in East Pakistan had been pushing for independence from majority Urdu-speaking West Pakistan when the election took place. Pro-independence politician Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's Awami League won close to all 162 seats allocated to East Pakistan in the common Pakistani parliament in the December 1970 election, making him a claimant for Prime Ministership of United Pakistan. The Pakistan military government refused. In response, led by the Awami League, East Pakistan started to fight for its independence. The Pakistan army violently attacked activists, triggering the Bangladeshi Liberation War from March to December 1971, during which Bengalis in East Pakistan were ethnically cleansed. When Bangladesh became independent, Mujib became the Prime Minister of a provisional government. Bangladesh's first general elections were held in March 1973. It was controversial. The Awami League won an overwhelming 73% of the vote and snatched 293 of the contested 300 seats. Allegations of rigging polls through ballot stuffing and intimidating and arresting opposition leaders marred Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's image. It was also the starting point, some say, of Mujib's subsequent autocratic policies. He banned all opposition parties and ushered in a one-party state. As Mujib tightened his grip, discontent grew in the power corridors of Dhaka. In August 1975, in a bloody coup organized by mid-level officials and led by Colonel Syed Tarique Rahman, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and most of his family were assassinated in their home. A turbulent period started. Mujib's finance minister took charge with the army's backing, and the first thing he did was undo the one-party system established by his predecessor. This was a period of great disruption in Bangladesh. Governments were formed and toppled in quick succession till then Army Chief Ziaur Rahman took over as president. In February 1979, first polls since 1973 took place. Zia's newly formed Bangladesh National Party, or BNP, participated and won 207 out of 300 parliamentary seats. Mujib's Awami League became the major opposition with 39 seats, and they claimed the elections were rigged by Zia. A year and 4 months later, Ziaur Rahman was assassinated in an abortive military coup on 30th May 1981. Vice President Abdul Sattar became acting president and conducted presidential elections in November that year. BNP again won 65% of the vote. But within months, Army Chief Hussain Muhammad Ershad seized power in a bloodless coup in March 1982, and he imposed martial law in Bangladesh. Ershad ruled for the next 4 years as a military dictator. When he held elections in May 1986, his Jatiya Party won 183 seats, securing a parliamentary majority. Opposition parties like the BNP had boycotted the vote, calling it a sham. The next elections, held in March 1988, was again criticized by the opposition parties as unfair and manipulated. Widespread protests calling for Ershad's resignation broke out. This was also the beginning of the era of Begums in Bangladesh politics. Ziaur Rahman's widow, Khalida Zia, led the BNP, and the Awami League was led by Sheikh Hasina, the eldest of Mujib's 2 surviving daughters. They joined forces to lead mass protests in December 1990 and forced Ershad's government to resign. A caretaker government held new elections on 27 February 1991, which were widely regarded as legitimate. Khalida Zia became Bangladesh's first woman Prime Minister, while Hasina's Awami League emerged as the main opposition. Over the next 5 years, tensions between the ruling BNP and Awami League were boiling. Led by Sheikh Hasina, the Awami League began pressing Khalida Zia to hand power over to a caretaker government to conduct forthcoming elections. When she did not, Awami League and other opposition parties boycotted the February 1996 election. Khalida Zia won it with the lowest voter turnout in the history of Bangladesh. General strikes across Bangladesh forced the BNP to hand over to a caretaker government just 12 days after the election. In March 1996, a requirement that a neutral caretaker government must oversee all future general elections was written into the Constitution of Bangladesh. Fresh elections were held in June 1996 with a much better turnout of 75%, and voting was widely seen as free. Sheikh Hasina won her first term as Prime Minister, while Khalida Zia sat in the opposition bench. In due course of time, 5 years later, another caretaker government oversaw the next general election in October 2001. This time, the opposition BNP surged in popularity and Khalida Zia of the BNP was able to form a government for a second time. This would be the last decade of Bangladesh's tryst with smooth democratic elections. What followed next set a pattern of autocratic concentration of power, opposition protest, and chaos. Ahead of the January 2007 elections, a dispute erupted between the ruling BNP and opposition Awami League. Riots broke out. Bangladesh descended into a political crisis that would last for several months. National emergency was declared, allowing the military to intervene. In protest, the Awami League withdrew from the planned elections. The elections were withheld and could only take place nearly 2 years later in December 2008. The Awami League, led by Hasina, allied with several other opposition groups and formed the Grand Alliance. Bangladesh posted the higher voter turnout of its history with 80%, and it was also largely seen as fair. And Sheikh Hasina formed a government for the second time. But this second term soon became a highly criticized one. Hasina's Awami League government was openly critical of the military intervention that had delayed the 2009 election. Upon her return to power, she amended the constitution to get rid of the caretaker government requirement. BNP boycotted voting on amendment. Sheikh Hasina's government also began to crack down on opposition leaders. Ahead of elections slated for 5th January 2014, opposition BNP leader Khalida Zia was placed under house arrest, and there were widespread reports of violence against other opposition members as well. So on election day, the BNP and its supporters refused to participate. Hasina's Awami League, in the absence of the main opposition, won the elections again, commencing the third term for Sheikh Hasina's rule. This term was widely panned in Bangladesh and internationally as illegitimate. The next general election was held on 30th December 2018, where voters for the first time could participate in electronic voting. BNP and other opposition parties accused the ruling Awami League, Jatiya Party coalition of rigging despite the technological upgrades. There were again reports of violence against opposition BNP members and the party's supporters, as well as allegations of vote rigging. The Awami League government had also banned the Jamaat-e-Islami, the country's largest Islamic party and a BNP ally at the time. Several Jamaat leaders were executed after convictions by Hasina-appointed tribunal for alleged war crimes in 1971 Mukti Juddho. Khalida Zia of BNP was outright barred from running after she was convicted and handed a 17-year jail term in a corruption case. The BNP maintained that the trial was politically motivated. The alliance of Hasina's Awami League and Eshad's Jatiya Party won a supermajority in the 2018 elections, with more than 90% of parliamentary seats. But the elections were broadly seen as a sham. The last election to be held under Hasina's administration was on 7th January 2024. In her fourth term, Sheikh Hasina continued to crack down on opposition politicians. On top of that, she was largely seen to have near total influence over the Electoral Commission that had been established in 1972. The opposition BNP boycotted the elections, and the Jamaat was still under a ban, paving the way for Hasina to win her 5th term in office and cement her government's position as the longest-serving administration in Bangladesh's history. Bangladesh had effectively become a one-party state again, just what Sheikh Hasina's father Mujibur Rahman had done exactly 50 years ago. The only difference was Mujib did it with constitutional amendment, while his daughter Hasina managed it by cornering and nearly obliterating the opposition. 8 months after the stupendous win and consolidation of power, Sheikh Hasina was ousted as the Prime Minister in July 2024 student uprising. On 5th August, Sheikh Hasina resigned and fled Bangladesh and took refuge in India. 3 days later, on 8th August, globally recognized economist and 2006 Nobel Peace Prize winner Muhammad Yunus took over as the interim leader. And for the next year and a half, Bangladesh went through many phases of chaos and riots in which minorities and Awami League were targeted before an election was announced and campaigns started. Bureau Report, India Today.
That's all we have in this special edition on the historic elections in Bangladesh. We will keep a close watch on what's happening in Bangladesh because it has a direct bearing on the security and stability of our eastern borders. But for more news and updates, keep watching India Today.